Parliament for Molo. He's the chairperson of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association and also that association in Africa. Mheshimiwa, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Let me give you an opportunity to say hi and then we'll begin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, especially those from Molo constituency. My name is Kuria Kimani, the Member of Parliament for Molo constituency, and also the President of the Africa Young Parliamentarians Network. This is a network of young members of Parliament who are elected in our respective countries in Africa. And our interest is to represent the voice of young people, not that in the Kenyan space, but most importantly, continentally, in African continent.
All right.
And I'm very happy to be here for this discussion
Karibu
today.
sana.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the contribution of young parliamentarians to Africa's democracy. And when we talk about Africa's democracy, let's bring it much more closer home, Kenya.
Thank you very much. Let's start from the context that the reason why we have independence in African countries is because the young people of those years stood up against the status quo, stood up against the oppression, stood up against forms of discrimination, like for example the apartheid in South Africa. And those are the people that became the presidents of the respective African countries at independence. And even now, if you look at the current caliber of national leaders, if you look at the Railas, the Orengos, the Uhurus, the Rutos, the Odingas, they represent the young people of the 80s and the 90s. So those young people that were there during that time and the ones that drove this change and the ones that are leading the nations now. And now what we figured out as African Young Parliamentarians Network is there has been so much challenges affecting the young people at the local space that we have not been able to see those young people come out and speak up against now those people, because what has happened? Ordinarily we expect that when these leaders of yesteryears become of age, then they age out. And ideally they should they give a chance to upcoming leaders. But what we've seen happening is that those leaders have refused to leave the arena. So we started from having young leaders to having youthful leaders and having leaders that are young at heart. So you'll find somebody who is probably 80 or 90 years of age and they tell you know what, I'm still young at heart. And we do not have a problem with our elders, but we're saying how do we tap to their skills, how do we tap their knowledge and ensure that there is still an asset of that knowledge base in the country and in the region.
There's something very important, sorry for cutting you short, that you've mentioned about the Raila Odingas then, the Orengos then, the Mother Karuas. You're talking about the young Turks. When you think about even in places like South Africa, when they were forming Umkhonto Wesizwe, an appendage of ANC, the young parliamentarians we have today, can they even measure up to the young Turks then?
I dare say yes. And I dare say yes because we've had, for example, if you look at those years, most of those leaders were not even elected. They were just in some space of civil society and things. But you've seen people like the likes of Honorable Sakaja, who is now the senator for Nairobi, standing up as a very young person and saying, I am capable of running for Senate in Nairobi. And you've had these people performing exemplary well when it comes to participation in the National Assembly and the Senate. And if the likes of my colleague, the Honorable John Mirigi, the MP from Meru, very young, we've for example, the likes of Honorable Didi Nyoro, who, if you, for example, if you look at UDA or the Hustler Nation movement, then you identify Didi Nyoro, a very young person in that movement. We have the likes of Mushangi, and there are very many of them. The problem we have is that we only choose to see the negative. And remember, in leadership, just like in every position, there is a learning curve. And the learning curve is when someone starts auditioning on the work as a journalist, for example, or a media presenter, they're not as good as the Kasavulis. The Kasavulis have been there for 30 years. So this is somebody who has been embarrassed on national TV, has made enough mistakes, and they have learned from them. So now trying to compare Catherine Kasavuli, for example, from somebody who just graduated from university now and is starting then to showcase their talent and journalism is very unfair.
You're saying you're doing well.
We're doing very well, I would say. We have our setbacks. We have some places where we have let young people down. There are places where we've let the society down. But overall,
all right.
we are doing something. And see, we have even the likes of Edwin Sifuna, very, very young person, who is the Secretary General for ODM, you know. So when they are when the young people are doing well, then that's okay. But the moment wamefanya tu blank na kidogo, sasa now that's when now all the mess starts. And trust to me, there has been messes in leadership, not just in the young people, but also in the older generation.
All right, let's talk about the acceptability of the youth folk. And you've counted the number of them that were elected in the last elections in 2017, quite a good number. Do you think we shall see additional numbers, particularly for the representation in county assemblies, as well as in the National Assembly and Senate, and probably even governors?
I dare say that you're going to see an even more youthful leadership in the next election. Because, and even not even looking about that, look at even, let me call them the oldies.
Yes.
Most of them are really struggling to identify one with the young people. They're really trying to blend in. And I'll give a very good example. There's this culture that's coming up called the Gegeton culture. And listen to the political temperatures. Go to those political meetings, and then you'll see the leaders even trying to imitate the language of these young people, even when they don't understand it. Which means that the voice of the young person is slowly getting heard in this country.
Right.
And we're going to, and what we're going to see even in the next election, we're going to see even more and more young people who dare to run for elective office. Because a very long time we were told that you guys, you don't have to run, you'll be nominated. And people have realized you wait to be nominated, and then they nominate the commanders and the Beth Mugas, respectively, okay? I've nothing against them. And then young people have realized, oh, so Kumbi, we are told to wait until now we are given this elected position, and they never get to be. So the nominated position. So we have more and more young people who are daring to run for political office. And I'll even give an example. I'll give an example of Kiamba. The ongoing campaigns in Kiamba. Whether you look at Kawanjiko or look at Karemi Wajama, you see two very relatively young people competing for, and those I would say would be, one of them is going to be be declared MP the day after tomorrow. And you see a generally young face in the two of them. You go to the by-election that we had in Georgia. Koibori is a very young person. You go to all the by-elections that we've had more and more young people stand up for elective positions, and you've had them actually win.
All right. Let's talk about, and you say we have a tendency to focus on the negative. Quite interesting, but there's this feeling, particularly when you look at young parliamentarians inside the National Assembly and also the Senate, that young parliamentarians are slowly casting the picture of a compromisable lot. They have no standing. You can compromise them very easily.
Let me give the reality. Apart from the Honorable John Muregi, every other young person elected, whether at the National Assembly or at the Senate, is elected on a political party ticket. I'm a Jubilee member of Parliament. The others are ODM or ANC or WIPE or whichever political party they ascribe to. And let us not lie to each other. These political parties have their owners. And so it's a very tricky balance between, if you want to serve in the next election, if you want to be consistently into this office, so that to make a fundamental change in the society. Because again, if you're elected for 5 years, there isn't much that you'll be able to achieve. So you want to be there in leadership, so that even what you gain now, you learn from your mistakes, you constantly improve yourself, you mentor others, so in the next 10 or 20 years, you can be governor material, you can be presidential material. How do you do that? You're operating in a space that's dominated by political parties. If you go, for example, to Mount Kenya region, or say the Kikuyu speaking nation, for example, you either speak the voice of Hustler Nation, or on the other side the Jubilee. Try running on our new DM ticket in Nyeri, and you'll be utajua how.
Does that explain what, and this is a little bit political, does that explain your dalliance with the deputy president? All of a sudden then you're drawn back, we don't see you again, out? You have to learn the political space. Okay. And it doesn't need to take a genius. If you come from a region that speaks a particular voice, if, for example, you come from the Rift Valley, and Rift Valley is saying that you have to be UDA, come on. If you want to be of service to your people, then you'll have to ascribe to
to those
Politics is local.
Politics is local. And you can be all the national you want, you can be all the international you want, but fundamentally, if you are a politician, you must listen to your employer, who is your voter. So to me, my voice is, what is a Molo person saying?
All right.
Where does a Molo person want to go? Because remember, my responsibility is to represent them and their interest. So if they ask me to represent them in a particular way, fundamentally, no matter how much goals I have out here, I must align myself to the goals of my employer.
All right, quite interesting. Let's talk about the youth agenda in Parliament. From where you sit, because there have been so many accusations by the young folk out here that the youths are not representing, the youth MPs are not representing them ably, because we've been in that parliament when rules, or rather what you would call statutes, have been made, and other legislations that appear to be very anti-startups, and I'm talking about startup businesses that have been anti-startups in this country, while you people were sitting in the parliament.
Unfortunately, and I dare say this, slightly out of topic a little. If you look at what is going in South Africa, I was seeing on the news how the only one shop that was not marked, or that people did not sell anything from, was a bookshop. You know, they sold everything from the hotels, from every other shop, but nobody touched the bookshop. So in relation to Parliament, there's a document, there's a record in Parliament called the Hansard, and that's what young people should use as a reference point. I give an example. Last year, when you were when you were vetting the IBC commissioners, there came a young person. I remember he was from Goosiland. I forget his name. A person with a disability and a young person, and his name came to the floor of the House. Almost everyone was against it. We held hands as young people and said, we are supporting this country, this candidate, no matter how unpopular this person is among those other people. Because sometimes some of these positions, when they come for vetting, whether it's commissioners and all, if it's not a big political if it's not a big political name out there, then they don't get the support of Parliament. And that guy nearly became a registrar, a deputy registrar of political parties. And they could go on. For example, the law that was started, this amendment was brought by the Honorable Isaac Mahora, for example, on elimination of this requirement that you have to get a health clearance certificate
from everywhere, from every
government. And he came, we brought that, and most of us as young people combined, and we fought against that. Now that is no longer a requirement. That session, there was a delay in disbursement of help funds to university students, and comrades were saying, now we have to go on strike. And I am on the record. I'm the one who moved that and said, if the CS Treasury does not release those funds to those to the comrades, then it's not going to be business as usual. And the moment we made that statement, as now Kenyan Parliamentarian Association, as young members of Parliament, the CS Treasury actually took point, and funds were dispersed and dispersed on time. But you see, now people don't want to focus on that. They want to focus on a few things. And remember, we are the minority in Parliament. So even if we really wanted to pass some particular legislation, remember, at the end of the day, the Speaker will put the question. Of those of their similar opinions say aye, of those of the speaker say nay. So if the nays are more than the ayes, definitely the nays will have it. And that is the reality.
Those are the rules and procedures.
Those are the rules and procedures of the House.
As we wind up very quickly, because you mentioned about Kiamba, and your peers, I know, are spending the night in Kiamba, others supporting the UDA candidate, others supporting the Jubilee candidate, and like you've ably said, clearly it's a two-horse race between UDA and Jubilee. Kimani Kuria is supporting which side?
I am a member of Parliament representing the great people of Molo.
Yes.
And this election is not in Molo. It is in Kiamba.
And your peers are in Kiamba.
But I'm really hoping that the best candidate wins. And I'm rooting for the Jubilee candidate for this reason.
All right.
Karirin Jama, to me, has demonstrated to be somebody who has been with the people consistently.
Okay.
I find Kawanjiku as somebody who has just come in now because there's a by-election. But if you look at Karirin Jama, he has been there before. So I find Karirin Jama as someone who has Kiamba interests at heart. And secondly, I'm looking at this scenario, and here I'm being totally objective and non-political at all.
Very quickly, as you the best.
I'm looking for a situation whereby in the next Parliament that we are going to vote in the individuals, not necessarily their political parties. Because the reason why a lot of conflict is going on against the 12th Parliament is because we have party parties, not individuals. And when those parties are whipped by the respective party leaders, then we have bills that should not even see the light of day coming to be part of the floor of the House. And that's my problem. So I'm really hoping that the Jubilee candidate will win, and hopefully he will win, but whoever wins, then we'll support them, because the will of the people of Kiambaa is supreme.
All right, tomorrow we are live from Kiambaa from 6 a.m. in the morning all the way up until when the results are announced, and you will get that happening right here on KBC Channel 1. Unfortunately, we are constrained of time. We have more news lined up for you, including business with Caroline Jenga and sports with Richard Monga. Don't go too far.